My name is Edith. I am 96 years old, and I still make my own coffee at 5:45 every morning, the way I have since 1948. When I was 32, I married my sister's husband. She asked me to. She asked me from her sickbed 11 days before she died, and I told her no. People always assume I said yes. I didn't. I said no, and I walked out to the car, and I sat in that driveway and cried until I was sick. I married him 14 months later. My children know pieces of this. The church knew the version the church wanted. But at 96, there is nobody left to protect. So sit down a minute. My sister's name was Clara, 3 years older, and she was the good one. I don't say that bitter, it's just the truth. Clara could quiet a crying baby, and I could balance a ledger. And that was the difference between us from the time we were girls on that farm outside Kewanee, Illinois. She married Roy in the spring of 1948. I was 18 and I stood up with her in a borrowed dress. Roy was a quiet man, big hands, farmed his father's ground. He said maybe 40 words at his own wedding, and 30 of them were thank you. I left home at 22, went up to Chicago and kept books for a lumber yard. I had my own apartment with a Frigidaire in it, and I was proud of that Frigidaire. And I had a man. His name was Lyle. He sold insurance, and he had asked me twice. I want that on the record. People tell this story like I had nothing going on and my sister handed me a family. I had a life. In the summer of 1961, Clara started getting tired. Then she started getting thin. They took her into the hospital in Peoria in September, and they opened her up and closed her right back. That is how they said it then. They didn't sit you down and explain. They just said it, and you knew. She was 34 years old. She had 3 children. Ruth Ann was 11, Dale was 8, and Junie was 4. I came home on the Rock Island line with 1 suitcase and told the lumberyard I'd be gone 2 weeks. She asked me on a Tuesday. I remember because the church ladies came Tuesdays with the casseroles, and I had just carried 3 of them in off the porch. She was so light by then, you could have picked her up like a coat. And she said, "Edie, sit down here a minute." Nobody called me Edie but her. And she said, "I need you to marry Roy." I laughed. God forgive me. I laughed at my dying sister because I thought she was confused from the medicine. But she wasn't confused. She had thought it all the way through, the way Clara thought everything through. She said, "Junie won't remember me, and somebody is going to raise her, and I want to know who it is." And she said, "Roy will not do well alone in that house." And then she said the thing I carried for the next 65 years. She said, "I am not asking you to love him. I am asking you to stay." And I said, "No." I said, "Clara, you cannot ask me that." And she said, "I know I can't. And she turned her head and looked out the window, and that was the end of it. She never brought it up again, not once in 11 days. She died on the 4th of October, 1961. It was raining. Junie was out on the porch with a coloring book because nobody knew what to do with her. I went back to Chicago. I want you to hear that too. I kept books another 11 months, and I let Lyle take me to dinner, and I did not answer Roy's letters. There were only 3 of them anyway. Roy was not a man who wrote letters. What brought me home was Ruth Ann, 11 years old, standing on a crate at the sink, doing the wash like a grown woman. Dale was fighting at school, and Junie had started calling every woman in that church basement Mama, just testing it on all of them to see if one would answer. I came home in September of 1962. In November, Roy came in from the field and stood in the kitchen doorway with his hat in his hand and said, "Edith, I don't know how to ask this in a way that isn't awful." And I said, "Then don't ask it nice, just ask it." We were married at the county courthouse on a Thursday morning. 11 minutes. No flowers. His mother didn't come. And a woman told my mother at the grocery that I had been waiting for my sister to die. I have never forgotten that, and I have never entirely forgiven it. If any of this is reaching you, do me a kindness and press the like button. And subscribe if you'd care to sit with me again. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. The town, the state, the country. At my age, it is a strange comfort to know these words land somewhere real. Now let me tell you the hard part, because the wedding was not the hard part. For the first 2 years, I slept on the edge of that bed like a woman on a train. Would not put my head on her pillow, and Roy never once reached for me. 2 years. He would say goodnight and turn to the wall. That was not coldness. That was a man being careful with somebody. Her recipe box sat on the shelf above the stove, her handwriting on every card. I cooked out of that box for 36 years. Every day of my married life, I read my dead sister's handwriting before supper. The children were harder than the marriage. Ruth Ann was easiest. She was old enough to remember her mother, so she never worried I was replacing her. She just needed somebody to run the house so she could go back to being 11. She called me Aunt Edith her whole life, and that was right. Junie called me Mama within a month. She was 4. She had no memory of Clara at all, and people don't understand what that did to me. If I let that child forget, Clara was gone twice. So I talked about Clara every day of her childhood. Your mother sang this. Your mother hated cucumbers. Your mother wrote this card. See her C's? She made them backwards. And then Dale. Dale was 8, which is the worst age for it. Old enough to know exactly what was happening and too young to have any say. He called me Edith, not Aunt Edith, Edith. From 9 years old in his own house to my face. 43 years that boy called me Edith. I'd like to say I was patient about it. I wasn't. There was a night in 1968 I threw a dish towel at his head and told him I was doing my best and he could go to hell. 15 years old. He looked at me and said, "Nobody asked me either." And he was right. I never argued with him about it again. I'll tell you the night I knew. February of 1966. Junie had the croup. We had her down on the kitchen floor with the oven door open and a kettle going for the steam, which is what you did then. Roy sat against the cabinet holding her, and around 4 a.m, he fell asleep, sitting straight up like that. And I looked at him and thought, I do not want him to wake up and be somebody else's husband. That was it. No music, no lightning. A tired man asleep on the kitchen floor, and a thought I could not take back. In 1971, he called me Edie by accident. It just came out of him while he was reaching for the salt, and he went white because nobody had called me that since Clara. He started to apologize, and I said, no, do that again. Keep doing that. He called me Edie for the next 27 years. He died in March of 1998 in the chair by the front window in the afternoon. I was holding his hand, and the last thing that man said in this world was Edie. 36 years, 9 years longer than he had with my sister, and I have never said that out loud to anybody because it sounds like a competition, and it isn't. At his funeral, Dale shook my hand, shook it like I was somebody from the bank. 6 years later, in 2004, Dale's wife got sick, the same thing, and he called me at 2 a.m. And this 51-year-old man was crying so hard, I could barely make out the words. He said, "Mom, I don't know how you did it. First time, 51 years old." I didn't say anything clever back. I said, "You don't do it. You just don't leave. That's all it is. You just don't leave." Now, I want to say 3 things and then I'll let you go. The first, a love that shows up slow is not a smaller love. I did not marry that man loving him. There is a lie people tell where everything turns beautiful right away. It didn't. It took me 4 years. But what I had at the end of those 4 years was not a consolation prize. It was the real thing, and it was mine. But hear me, I am not telling any young woman to settle and wait for it to turn into something. There is a world of difference between a slow love and a bad bargain, and you will know which one you are in. The second, if you are ever raising a child who is not yours, do not make that child choose. Do not stand in front of the one who is gone. Keep her alive in that house. Say her name at the table. It costs you nothing, and it gives that child somewhere to put the missing. And the third, this is the one I have thought hardest about. My sister asked me, and I said no. And then nobody asked me anything again. Roy didn't ask, not really. The town didn't ask. Those children certainly didn't ask. but I still chose it. I got on a train in September of 1962 and I chose it. And I chose it again 1,000 mornings after that. And that is the only reason I survived it. If I had only been asked, I'd have spent my whole life feeling owed something. Because I chose, I kept my own life instead of feeling it was taken from me. There is all the difference in the world between a thing done to you and a thing you decide. For 20 years, I believed Clara took my life away. I don't believe that anymore. But it was not a fair thing to ask a person. She had no right. I have forgiven my sister completely. And I still say she had no right. And I have made my peace with holding both of those at once. Junie has the recipe box now. Her daughter lives out in Ohio and bakes Clara's peach cobbler off a card in Clara's handwriting. And that girl never met her and never will. That is what I did with my life. I kept a dead woman in a kitchen for 65 years. If you have stayed with me this far, then you and I are made of something similar. Press that like button and subscribe, because there will be more of these. And tell me in the comments where you are watching from. And one more thing, if you're willing. Tell me whether you ever loved somebody you did not start out loving. I would truly like to know. I am not the only one. I read every one of them. Go on and call your sister tonight. I don't care if you argued. Call her. This has been Edith, 96 years old, 36 years married, and still cooking out of my sister's handwriting. Goodbye now.